Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to deep dive into one of the observation records of Tommy Yoshida, whose Japanese name is Yoshida Tsutomu.
Right.
And just to set the stage, this channel doesn't evaluate AI or teach you how to use it or, reach neat conclusions.
No, we definitely don't do that.
Yeah, here, incomplete thoughts, pending questions, and concepts that just don't need to be closed are left exactly as they are. This is all under the premise that we are all currently in a transition period.
Which is a messy place to be.
It really is. So you might notice that some of the phrasing or concepts today feel, slightly unnatural or carry a sense of discomfort.
Yeah.
That discomfort is intentionally left uncorrected because it is part of observing how language, technology, and human judgment interact during this era of change.
Exactly. And they are stepping into a very specific kind of observation today. We're looking at a set of dual language notes. So they were written in both Japanese and English by Yoshida. And he isn't analyzing some distant sci-fi future. He is looking at a completely mundane, everyday scenario, just sitting down at a financial institution and getting investment product recommendations.
It is an incredibly ordinary interaction, right? I mean, you go to open an account, maybe you want to start planning for retirement, and you are eventually handed this curated list of options.
Yeah, exactly.
We all assume that when we're presented with that list, that exact moment, like looking at the screen or the piece of paper, is when our act of choosing actually begins.
We really do.
But Yoshida's note suggests something that, well, it should make all of us pause. What if the starting line of your choice has secretly moved?
It's a great question because we think the starting line is fixed, We operate under the assumption that the race begins when the gun goes off, and we start weighing the pros and cons of the options right in front of us.
Yeah, the options on the screen.
Right. But Yoshida's observing that the race actually started miles back, long before we even arrived at the track. The options we are looking at have already survived a marathon of invisible decisions.
Think about the last time you made a choice from a customized list. Maybe it was a financial portfolio or, something as simple as picking a health insurance plan.
Sure.
You looked at the options, you felt the weight of the decision, and you picked one. But if we dig into the mechanics of how that list was generated, we really have to ask, did you really make the choice? Or was the choice already mostly made for you?
That's the core of it.
To understand this shift in agency, we need to look at how this process worked before the current algorithmic era. Because Yoshida points out that the basic structure gathering your information and presenting you with candidates has been around for decades.
It has. In the Japanese financial sector, there is this foundational pre-AI practice that Yoshida highlights. It translates roughly to the principle of suitability.
Okay, the principle of suitability.
Yeah, or tekigusei no gensoku in Japanese. The core idea is that a financial institution has a strict obligation to ensure that the products they offer absolutely align with a customer's specific profile.
So they're looking at your background.
Right. They evaluate your current assets, your past experience with investing, and your stated tolerance for risk.
It's a protective measure, basically. I mean, if I walk into a bank with my modest life savings and tell them I just want a safe place to park it, they shouldn't be offering me highly volatile, high-risk derivatives.
Exactly. And historically, the mechanism to enforce this suitability was built on deterministic logic.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning it was a rule-based system. It often functioned like a giant decision tree.
Hmm.
If you checked a box saying, I have low-risk tolerance, a hard-coded rule physically removed high-risk equities from your potential portfolio.
So it was very black and white?
Very. It was a literal line of code or a strict policy. Like, if age is over 60 and risk tolerance is low, then hide asset class C. The institution gathered your info, they defined a safe range based on these static rules, and presented the candidates that survived that basic filtration.
I see. It's kind of like going bowling, but with the bumper rails up.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, the bowling alley, which is the financial institution in this case, puts the rails up in the gutters based on your skill level. They set a hard static boundary so you literally cannot throw a gutter ball.
Right, the worst case scenario is protected against.
Exactly. But you still pick up the heavy ball, you still walk up to the line, you still physically throw it down the lane, choosing the angle and the speed, and when it hits the pins, it feels entirely like your action.
That analogy captures the traditional rule-based system perfectly. The bumpers are static rules. They're visible, or at least transparent if you asked about them.
You can see them right there.
Yeah. You can ask the advisor, hey, why isn't this aggressive stock on my list? And they can point to the specific rule. They'll say, well, because you checked the low-risk box, you are still doing the choosing within that clearly defined safe lane.
Right. But things have changed.
They have. Yoshida observes that the internal process, like the way those candidates are filtered before they ever reach you, has fundamentally transformed, even though the outward interaction looks identical.
That's the crazy part. The desk looks the same. The advisor looks the same. The screen looks exactly the same. But the logic running beneath it has completely shifted.
It's a totally different engine now.
Yeah, we aren't dealing with simple decision trees anymore, are we?
At all. We have moved from deterministic logic to probabilistic weighting and really complex algorithmic curation. The AI isn't just looking at your static answers on a questionnaire to trigger a simple if-then rule.
So what is it doing instead?
It's utilizing predictive analytics and collaborative filtering. The system layers together just vast oceans of data. It looks at your past financial behavior, sure, but it also creates a vector for you.
A vector?
Yeah, like a mathematical representation of your entire profile. And then it compares it against millions of other customer profiles in this massive multidimensional space.
Mm-hmm.
It even factors in micro fluctuations in the market in real time.
Wow. So instead of a simple rule just eliminating an option, the system is basically saying people whose data footprint looks 85% similar to this client's footprint historically abandoned this type of asset during minor market dips, so we will aggressively downweight it until it drops off the top 5 list we show them.
That is exactly the invisible mechanism. It
Yeah.
doesn't just block the gutters anymore.
Going back to the bowling thing.
Right. To borrow your analogy, the AI is quietly hiding the heavier bowling balls in the back room. And it's moving the lane 3 feet closer to the pins because it calculated that people with your exact demographic data prefer a slightly easier, faster game.
That is wild.
It curates the reality you are allowed to interact with.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a second, because
Right.
we are all very used to algorithmic curation.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we all know Netflix curates our movie choices based on what similar viewers watched. We know social media algorithms feed us content based on probabilistic weighting. And honestly, it usually works.
It's highly effective, yeah.
Right. If I am sitting across from a financial advisor or just using my banking app, I kind of want them to use all the accumulated data they have to guide me.
Sure. You want the best result.
Exactly. If the AI uses collaborative filtering to get me a perfectly tailored portfolio that yields, say, a 7% return instead of a 3% return, why does my agency even matter?
That's the big question.
Right. Like, if the outcome is demonstrably better, shouldn't I be thrilled to just hand over the steering wheel? Why should I feel this discomfort that Yoshida is writing about?
You are touching on the exact tension that makes this observation so critical. Yoshida calls this out directly. The discomfort isn't about the system being bad at its job. It's that the deep, granular assistance has quietly become the premise of the interaction.
The premise.
Yes. You are focusing on the convenience and the outcome, which, are very real benefits. But the discomfort arises because the boundary of how those options are shaped is entirely
We
opaque.
don't see the bumpers anymore.
We can't see them at all. In a low-stakes environment like streaming, if the algorithm hides a great movie from you, the cost is trivial. You just watch something else.
Right.
But in a high-stakes environment like personal finance, career algorithms, or medical treatment options, the cost of that hidden curation is your fundamental autonomy.
But if the AI is smarter than a static checklist, isn't that inherently a good thing?
Well, smarter doesn't necessarily mean neutral. When a human advisor uses their experience to guide you, you can interrogate their reasoning.
That makes sense.
Yeah, if they leave something off the list, you can just ask, hey, why isn't this here? And they can articulate their thought process. But probabilistic AI is often a black box.
You can't ask it why.
Exactly. The list you see is the survivor of 1,000 invisible algorithmic cuts, based on correlations that neither you nor the human advisor fully understand. The discomfort comes from the realization that you are accepting a heavily edited version of reality as if it were the whole picture.
Man, we are treating the curated list as if it represents the sum total of our valid choices, when in reality, it's just the tiny fraction of options that survived a mathematical gauntlet we can't even see.
And that forces us into the deepest philosophical layer of Yoshida's notes. We have to transition from how the technology filters choices to who actually bears responsibility for the outcome.
Because the surface of the interaction hasn't changed.
Right. You still sign the paperwork. You still authorize the transfer of funds. So the legal and practical responsibility rests entirely on your shoulders.
This is where the transition period gets really messy. Let's say the system, running its invisible collaborative filtering, quietly suppresses a specific investment option.
Right.
It doesn't violate a hard rule, but the AI downweights it because 1,000 people with a similar profile to yours historically didn't do well with it.
Happens all the time.
Right. But maybe that option would have been phenomenal for your specific nuanced life situation. You never see it. You never even know it was an option. Who takes responsibility for that missed opportunity?
That is a profound gap in accountability.
Yeah.
Because you can't be held responsible for an option you were never permitted to see.
Right. I didn't say no to it.
Exactly. And the human advisor didn't actively choose to hide it. The system just didn't surface it on their screen either. The developers of the AI didn't write a rule to ban it. The algorithm just probabilistically deprioritized it.
So no one is actually responsible.
Responsibility just sort of evaporates in the invisible space between the machine's hidden aggregation and your final signature.
So the boundary between the strict rules of the past and the accumulated algorithmic results of the present is completely blurred. There is no line on the screen that says, these two options are here because of your strict risk profile, and these three are here because a black box neural network noticed a correlation between your spending habits and a specific market trend.
Right. It all just looks like one authoritative list.
It really does.
And Yoshida points out that because this boundary is invisible, we rarely pause to be conscious of it. We are making decisions inside a framework that has been artificially narrowed, yet we experience the full psychological weight of full responsibility.
I'm essentially rubber stamping an invisible machine's decisions, but legally, my signature is on the line. It makes me question the very definition of a decision.
It really challenges the whole concept.
It does. If the heavy lifting of selection, like the real defining of my financial reality, has already occurred in the dark layers of an algorithm before the screen even lights up, what am I actually doing when I point to an option on the screen? Am I choosing, or am I just confirming the AI's preselections?
This is exactly the white space we need to dwell in.
Yeah.
Yoshida states very clearly in the English portion of his notes, and I'll quote it, "The answer is not stated here, but the question seems to remain."
Wow.
Yeah. We are conditioned to want to fix this, to find a way to make the algorithm perfectly transparent, or to just revert to the old decision trees. But the reality is we can't go backward, and we haven't yet figured out how to assign ethical or legal responsibility to probabilistic math.
We are sitting right in the middle of that transition. The act of choosing hasn't disappeared. The legal framework still treats you as a fully autonomous agent making a rational choice from a set of options.
On paper, you are totally in control.
Right. But our physical and psychological position relative to the starting line of that choice has undeniably shifted. We think we are at the beginning of the process when we look at the list, but we are actually coming in at the very end.
The premise has changed entirely. Assistance is no longer just a helpful nudge. It is the invisible foundation of the entire interaction. The algorithm frames the world, and we just pick the colors within that frame.
That really reframes how you look at the convenience of modern life. I mean, we started this deep dive looking at a very specific mundane scenario, getting a list of financial products.
A very normal Tuesday errand.
Yeah, exactly. We looked at the traditional deterministic rules of suitability where boundaries were static and clear, and then we unpacked the mechanics of the shift, how probabilistic weighting and collaborative filtering now happen before we even blink.
And we are left with the reality that this system takes past behavior, market nuances, and profile similarities, and quietly curates the reality we are allowed to choose from, leaving us to shoulder the responsibility for outcomes determined by processes we can't fully comprehend.
For everyone listening, it is crucial to realize that while Yoshida happened to observe this in a financial setting, this invisible shift of the starting line is happening everywhere.
Oh, everywhere.
We've accepted it in low-stakes environments like our social media feeds and streaming queues, but the exact same mechanics are now structuring high-stakes environments. It is happening when a medical algorithm suggests treatment options to your doctor.
Yes.
It is happening when an automated HR system curates the list of candidates a hiring manager sees.
The loss of autonomy is wearing this incredibly appealing mask of hyper-personalization. The price we pay for a world that perfectly anticipates our needs is that we no longer know what options the world decided we didn't need to see.
So we want to leave you with a final thought. We aren't going to resolve the discomfort because that discomfort is the only thing keeping us aware that the shift is happening.
It's a necessary feeling.
It really is. Next time you are presented with a perfectly tailored list of options, whether it is an investment portfolio at your bank, a recommended career path on a job board, or a major life decision neatly organized on a screen, ask yourself, who actually made the first cut?
Are you truly deciding how to play the game?
Or did the alley already decide which pins were allowed to be knocked down? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.